Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. The draft post-mortem starts now.
Hey, this is Arif Hasan from the Wide Left Substack. I think Blue Sky might have the juice. There's a Turkish freedom fighter always in Luke's replies for some reason.
What's up? I'm Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings, and I'm sick, but not as sick as Kobe King.
Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. I now need a Royal Rumble with Mel Kiper and every GM in the octagon.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Arif Hasan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talks Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Hello and welcome into a brand new week on the Minnesota Football Party and Locked On Sports Minnesota. We're with you for the next hour, breaking down every morsel of the Vikings draft. Was Donovan Jackson the right move at 24? Your favorite of the other four picks? Your favorite UDFA? And is Sam Howell slinging Sammy Howell the best solution at QB2? Today's Minnesota Football Party on the Locked On Podcast Network is brought to you by Nissan and the 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada draft pick of the week later in the show. You met the Lukes, you met Arif, and I'm Sam Ekstrom. And remember, Locked On Podcast Network provides your team every day. Thanks for making us your first watch or listen today for your second one. Get more draft coverage with Luke Braun, who provided ample draft coverage over the weekend. Not only was he an integral part of the day one live stream that went 3+ hours, but also the day three live stream coordinator that went 7+ hours. So, Luke, you were live on this channel for over 10 hours over the weekend, and you are just a pillar of health coming off of that, aren't you?
I was not healthy for any of it. This is my flu game.
Phenomenal. Well,
Yeah.
no, but Jordan did well in the flu game.
We had 500 live viewers. I would argue that I killed it.
Yeah.
Jordan also, I mean, like a lot of sick athletes have a ton of viewers. I don't know, man.
It was more,
Different
it probably
standards for
resembled more of
podcasters,
the
okay.
Luka flu game on Friday when Luka had the stomach bug and kind of stumbled
Missing
through.
some bunnies.
Luke,
Missed some bunnies there.
props.
Yeah,
Props
yeah,
to Luke
props,
Braun.
man. Unbelievable.
Fulfilled
Thank you.
the betting
That is
punishment.
That is the second to last elaborate punishment that I will ever do. That was what I told Luke at the end of the show. I talked to you about that, Sam. I have something for Locked On Vikings that involves a lot of eggs, and then I am calling it a career moratorium on elaborate punishments. If we want to do something for the betting the betting contest, I will find a different way. But I'm good. I've had enough. I'm done.
Only Chris Borland. He's retiring early after a year or
Yep.
two. And he's out of there.
What a pull.
I paid my dues.
Yeah.
I've done my wings.
Like that?
I've done my stream. I'll have eaten my eggs. Enough.
What is, just real quick, what is the egg challenge that you got to do? Is it like the pancake house where you got to eat a pancake every hour? Or what are you doing?
The agreement was somebody hit a bold prediction on Locked On Vikings. We do Friday bold predictions. Someone got one right. And I decided the punishment would be to eat that game's score in eggs in a single day, which is 36.
Oh, 36. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you preparing? Are you practicing? Are you stretching that stomach out? How are you doing?
I would say the preparation is more creative. We have ideas. My wife is going to help me with the video that we're going to make for this, which could perhaps debut here or on my show or both. So we have creative ideas for how I'm going to do this. I have recipe ideas for how I'm going to prepare all the different eggs so I don't get sick of them.
Right. Yeah.
I'm trying to work out most of that day, get on the bike a lot, work up an appetite.
Yeah, because the two primary challenges are like volume and nausea, right? And so those
Right.
are the two that you're trying to solve. Like, because I remember you were talking about this, and someone in a chat had mentioned, like, what about like muffins? And you're like, that's like 1 egg for 6 muffins.
One egg for 6 months. I don't know why people keep suggesting that.
Yeah,
Think about it for 2 seconds. I have to
yeah,
eat 36 eggs.
Yeah, I agree that that's remarkably inefficient, but also that would be funny, and that is a creative way to do accounting, even if it doesn't help you at all.
I feel like it fills you up, though. I mean, that's muffins are just
yeah, that's the issue,
right?
But
Inefficient, also filling, but also Luke, can you? T-Bass says we're 5 minutes late. You owe us 50 push-ups. Can you just do 50 push-ups? Quick?
yeah,
just
come on, Luke.
One more.
Do it right after
out.
the show. I promise.
Just rip them out real quick.
Work up that appetite for the eggs. Let's talk Donovan.
Yeah,
Jackson.
I'll get him on egg day. We have it.
You take it out alone
like
for those 36 eggs, or what?
Yeah, how you paying off that egg expense, man?
Oh yeah, no, I'm in contact with the bank. I'll be okay.
Opening up that Costco credit card. No
Yeah,
interest.
It's all right.
Let's talk Donovan Jackson in two parts. Number one part, let's talk about the player Donovan Jackson and what he represents. Part two, let's talk about the process and who was on the board, what they did versus what they could have done, not executing a trade. I think there's two, we don't need to rain on Donovan Jackson's parade to start with, because I think the Vikings got a good player here. Luke Braun was super pumped when the pick came in. This is a run blocking mauler. This is potentially a week 1 starter. This is an upgrade at a position that gives you a potentially elite offensive line. There's a lot to like here. So Braun, you were the biggest fan of it. Give me your 3 days later take, 4 days later take actually on Donovan Jackson, the player.
Yeah, still a big fan. I actually think the point of him is pass pro. That's where he's the most polished. That's where he's got the most answers to the questions that defensive linemen will pose to him. And that's where you kind of get this thing we haven't had with the guards, where we go, okay, with him and Will Fries, if they end up one-on-one with a halfway decent D tackle, I feel okay about it. I don't need to hide them in doubles all the time. In the run game, certainly no slouch either. I think the biggest weakness, or two of the biggest weaknesses that you'll hear about him, are one, that he has a false step, which is true, but kind of small potatoes, not really a huge deal. It'll make him a half a beat late to some things sometimes, but it's pretty small. And then two, that he doesn't have the heaviest hands. That when he punches, it doesn't have the oomph that you will see with somebody like Tyler Booker, who has really heavy hands and will really move somebody. And maybe that's what got him drafted over Donovan Jackson in Dallas. But at the end of the day, he can still get his hands on somebody, drive them, move them eventually. It's just not quite as aesthetic. So the agreed upon weaknesses for guys like Dane Brugler, Lance Zierlein, all of the mainstream draft analysts, the things they all agree on are things I also don't really care about. So I just think it's a really good pick. They drafted a guard. People have been begging for that for a decade. I don't know why people are still finding a way to be mad.
It's the internet. Come on. You know why.
Grow up.
Inman.
No.
Oh, yeah. Not too much. I mean, I love the player, love the fit. I agree. Instant day 1 starter. By the time week 1 rolls around, we all agree that there'll be a training camp battle and competition. I just think he's flat out going to be more talented and more polished even than Blake Brandel by the time we get there. And also too, barring anything fluky, this is your left guard now for at minimum the next 5 years. I just appreciate the fact I like watching good front offices, good coaches identify their biggest weaknesses and find a way the following offseason to turn that into a legitimate strength. And it just feels like with the interior offensive line that, to Luke's point, we've been griping about year after year, offseason after offseason. That's exactly what they did. It is a bona fide strength now, top to bottom on that offensive line, left to right, 1 through 5. And, if you go back, it kind of all started in free agency, spending the money on the defensive line, the cornerback position with Byron Murphy and Hodgins and everything else. That in turn allowed them the freedom to take a guard with your first pick, and first pick of only 4 picks too at the time. So I think Braun was the one to say it on the draft stream, the postcast, that you take 9 sacks versus the Rams. That leave a bad taste in your mouth. Obviously should have. Let's get aggressive, go fix the issue. And let's not go into the preseason this year for the first time when it feels like years, talking about do we need to go sign Dalton Reisner 12 days before the season starts? No, let's just go get our guys. And the other part of this too that we've talked about a lot, this whole offseason is just chips are all in on JJ McCarthy. It's the JJ show now. He's got the keys to the castle. For good or bad, whether he pans out or not, they have made the necessary moves to say, you know what? We did everything we could to set this guy up for success. The skill players, the weapons around him, the running backs we brought in, the protection now up front. You even got to sit and learn on the sidelines for a year. Granted, not by choice, but I'm just saying, like, if he's not the guy, at least we have the infrastructure, the foundation in place for the next guy then, and that's not the worst problem to have.
Gonna raise McCarthy's floor considerably to have this type of protection and presumably better run blocking than we've seen in the KOC era. And consider this, of the 5 offensive projected starters and the 5 defensive line projected starters, like 2 edges and 3 down linemen, the only one with an expiring contract this year is Andrew Van Ginkel. And you've got Dallas Turner waiting in the wings. And a number of them are signed through 2027 or beyond. I mean, you've got long-term stability, expensive, but long-term stability in the trenches now, Arif. Quick, your thoughts on Jackson?
Yeah, no, I think that he is generally a good player. I think that the Vikings added value to their roster. I don't think the question about Jackson is whether or not, the Vikings grabbed, a player that's going to improve things over somebody like a Blake Brandel, right? Like there are, and which is like what you'd expect out of a first round pick. You take a look at the rest of the class at guard, and I think it'd be very difficult to stack up Donovan Jackson as anything but one of the top guards in the class. To me, the question is just about value. And I'm not even talking about the trade necessarily that they could or couldn't have taken. I'm just talking about grabbing guards in the first round. I know that, positional value is a question that like gets done to death and people are sick of it. Maybe you just grab good players, and I get it. I don't mean you shouldn't draft guards in the first round when I bring this up. I more mean if you compare Jackson to other guards drafted in the first round, and there have been some outstanding ones, and I don't want to talk about your Quentin Nelsons. That's unfair. I just mean like your David DeCastros and stuff like that, right? I don't think he's as dominant as a lot of those guys, and so I can see why he was not projected to be a first-round pick by a lot of other analysts, right? I think that his pass protection is very good. It's difficult for me to ding him too much. It's like I can't call it great, but I also don't want to say that's a huge problem because he played half the year at like left tackle, and I don't want to knock him for what I think is a bad game against Abdul Carter in his first start at left tackle ever. Like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Can I chime in too? Somebody asked, will he start at left tackle? No.
I don't want that.
That's a terrible idea.
I don't want that.
We saw why that's a terrible idea, but
I think that's
if you
Brandel.
just focus on what he did at guard, you get
because Brandel played
or school.
Like, yeah. I think that that's a better choice. That's a good point, Sam. I will say, I don't want to knock him too. Also, like Taylor Decker got whipped by Khalil Mack, right? Like these things happen, but. I think that his true position is guard. Ohio State wanted it that way. I thought it showed excellent teamwork and character to move the tackle and immediately get ready to play. I wouldn't say that was the strength of his or anything like that, but I just think he's good. I don't think that he's great, and I think you should draft good players at high value positions in the first round and great players at low value positions in the first round. I think is kind of the way I want to approach that.
This carries us, I think, into the second part, which is the process, BPA versus need, all of that. Let's get an early break in and then return and have that debate on the Minnesota Football Party. Brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in the building. I think Target Center over the weekend, XL Energy Center over the weekend is evidence of that. Wow. Crazy atmospheres. Every bucket, every goal, every save, every Luka Doncic flop. It just feels bigger when you're in the building. Game time helps with that. Last minute deals save you up to 60%. Prices often going down the closer to tip-off you get. Priority last minute deals get you into concerts, comedy, theater, and sports with just a couple clicks on the Game Time app. Game Time picks, curates the best deals for you in the arena, so you see where the value lies. All in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Maybe get to Game 6 at XL Energy Center. Wolves won't have a Game 6 at home. They're going to win on Wednesday. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, part 2 of the discussion. Arif got us there, and now we'll dive in. You don't make a trade out, and I know what everyone's going to say. Well, if you, Houston's going to take Jackson at 25 if you don't take him, if you make a trade out. I understand that argument. Would have loved to have a first-round pick from Atlanta, and we'd take that deal. Here are the guys I think that were left on the board that were linked to the Vikings. Hairston, Starks. And when I say linked, I mean conceivably could have been taken by the Vikings.
Mocked or people discussed.
Yep. Emin Worry, Will Johnson. I think even Tyleik Williams. I mean, at interior defensive line. Oh, someone doesn't like the Tyleik Williams pick. So there, those 5 names on the board. You don't trade, you stay put. So from a process standpoint, Inman, are you good with the way it was handled with who was on the board, and you took a very specific area of need for this year's team? Did you do that at the expense of a better player?
Well, when you bring up those 2 or 3 names, I wasn't super high. I didn't love Hairston in the first round. Even Malachi Starks, I wasn't like that. Wouldn't have excited me. It just wouldn't have excited me. And I think the devil's advocate say, well, how can you be excited about a guard? Like, it's not fun or splashy. How do you pick a guard at 24? I hear people talking about and feel like you got good value. I think that's the big question. Why didn't they trade back? Texans, Rams, Eagles, Chiefs are all right behind. 3 out of those 4 teams alone had huge offensive line needs. And the 4th team, the Eagles, we've seen aren't afraid to go trenches no matter what their depth chart or roster looks like. So I'm fairly confident. We'll never know. I'm fairly confident, though, that not only would have he been gone by the time you move back, let's just say it was the Giants, right? Early round 2, but also this guy was worthy of a late first-round pick. I feel like they got fair value for them. For him where they took him. Like, this isn't Ed Ingram at the end of round 2. Don't let that pick kind of trick you into thinking, they keep overdrafting these guards or interior players with early picks. Ed Ingram was a massive reach on the consensus big board at the end of round 2 when they took him.
Huge
Donovan
reach,
Jackson.
40 rank reach, by the way.
Okay,
I
thank
don't
you.
want to undersell that. Yeah.
Thank you. Donovan Jackson has always felt like a top 32, sure, maybe top 35 player through and through. Who, again, I'm very excited to watch like the whole puzzle now come together on this offensive line. But even though, okay, you say he's a top 35 player, why don't you try to trade back? I don't think he would have been there with that offensive line gauntlet there of teams that needed that pick, especially he could have went 1 pick later to the Texans. And I don't think anybody would have batted an eye. So I think at the end of the day, we can always nitpick. I'm with Arif. I'm all about the value. Try to maximize the most value out of your picks. But at the end of the day, they filled a position of need with a talented player that was worthy of a late first-round pick. Granted, it would have been nice to steal a couple extra picks, but I don't think that guy would have been there.
I think that it's safe to say the following, Braun. If you don't take Donovan Jackson with that pick, that means you're probably rolling with Brandel again as your left guard, or you're calling on Dalton Reisner. Like, this might have been the last way to address that position this offseason credibly. So with that in mind,
who's the next guard that went? Like, who
Jonah,
they have taken?
Jonas.
It depends on
Jonah.
whether or not you count Jonas Savania as a potential guard, because he played tackle in college.
He really should move in, but yeah.
But yeah, I think that he's a guard too. But
do.
after that, it's like Tate Ratledge, and there's one more guard, Marcus Embo.
Wyatt Millam?
No, Wyatt Millam was quite a bit later.
Embo was 4th round, 5th round.
Embo was way later, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, yeah, you're right. On the consensus board, he was like the next guard.
Oh,
yeah. But yeah, I guess Milam and Tate Ratledge, I think, is the name that kind of popped out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're going with one of those guys probably, or you're going with some 5th rounder that you're taking instead of like Tai Felton or whatever. And I think about it, because when the Vikings would have been up, which would have been 46 if they had been able to swing that same trade with the Falcons, Will Johnson was still on the board. So I think the alternate world is they trade back, they get that 1st round pick, and now we're talking about Will Johnson's knee and how concerned we are about Will Johnson's knee, which could be this super, super awesome thing, but it exposes you to a huge risk of exactly repeating your Lewis Cine mistake. That's exactly the same like logic that led Kwesi to trade past Kyle Hamilton and say, yeah, a little bit of risk, but we get more value. Let's get a guy that we think is just a little worse than Hamilton, but we get all these extra picks. And while I don't think, like, if they did do it again, I would probably project that it goes a little better because it went like every single bottom percentile outcome happened on all of those picks. It's still like, I'm not going to blame him for doing his like fairway analogy and being like, you know what? Why don't we just take a guy we know is good and like not complicate it so much this time?
Another
analogy
kind of sounded a lot better than it read. Reading it was so confusing, but hearing it, oh yeah,
very often with Kwesi, his like intonation, matters.
So sorry, Luke.
Inman, yeah, go ahead, Inman.
I was just gonna say another kind of fun exercise I always like to go through as well when it comes to like value, because each draft class is so different. We talked about Cam Ward probably would have been the 4th or 5th quarterback in this year's draft. Like Tet McMillan probably would have been the 4th receiver if he was in last year's draft. You know, Matthew Golden might have been like the 8th or 9th receiver in last year's draft. But stacking up Donovan Jackson at the end of round 1 compared to last year and even 2023 or 2022, I'm just pulling up the list. Graham Barton, that was last year. Steve Avila to the Rams, fifth pick in the 2nd round. Kenyon Green to the Texans with the 15th overall pick. Zion Johnson. Where do you, if you remember, and it's okay if you don't because it was a while ago, where did you guys have those guys ranked compared to like a Donovan Jackson?
I would have taken Jackson easily over Green. There's no question.
100%. I think Green was kind of a reach at the time too, for sure. Yeah. And he hasn't really panned out either. And they're all kind of pick your flavor too. Zion Johnson, a little bit different skill set.
I loved Zion Johnson.
So did I. Yeah. Yeah. I love Steve Avila too. And he's been pretty solid as well for the Rams. It was higher than I thought he would go a little bit, but kind of apples and oranges again when you're in different draft classes. But sometimes it's fun to stack them up. Next to previous year's draft, just to kind of see, compare and contrast a little bit. Hey, this guy got taken at the end of round 1, but it was a weaker, or maybe there was more depth, whatever the conversation piece may be. I think that's a good exercise to talk about value with.
Right. So I think there's like a couple of things at play here. First, the players that Sam named, I would rather the Vikings like reach on Donovan Jackson than grab good value with like Nick Emmanwori. I think Jackson is a good player, and I don't think Nick Emmanwori is a good player, right? So there is that. I do think the way we're talking about it as if the Vikings' only option was to grab a guard. It is okay for 4 of your offensive linemen to be very good as opposed to 5. I think that's okay. And I think we got too indexed on that element of the discussion because I was openly questioning whether or not we knew whether or not Houston would take Donovan Jackson. I think subsequent reporting has very much validated the very strong likelihood that they would have taken him had the Vikings traded out or something like that, taken the Giants or the Falcons' offer, which, again, Luke makes the point that maybe the Falcons didn't offer that to the Vikings. I don't know. Let's assume that they had the possibility.
I'm waiting for reporting on that. But there was reporting about the Falcons and Rams making a trade, and everybody, it was reporting about the Rams trading up with the Falcons to like 15 or wherever that was. But there was it might have been about that one. So the Falcons and Rams were talking about that trade for a while. Right. But it's a different critique, right? Because it's like, okay, why'd they call them and not you?
So Jerry Straka, I think you've got a good point. Weakest link theory is relevant here, right? Like cornerback, offensive line, their weakest link positions. They're only as strong as your weakest link. But you can like model this out. You can take a look at like the likely number of pressures an offensive line gives up and model each individual offensive lineman and see how many. And you could do fine with a 4th or 5th offensive lineman. That's not that great with 4 good. Most good offensive lines don't have 5 good offensive linemen. So I don't want to over-index on one position and talk about it as if that's the only option the Vikings had, because they could trade down, grab a good player at a different position, maybe one at a position of need, maybe not a Maxwell Hairston, but grab a, but grab a good player at a position of need.
Hasn't stopped him in the past.
Right. Yeah. And reload for next year. Not everybody fixes the Vikings didn't fix every position of need this year. So I think it's a little bit much for us to be over-indexed at this guard question. I do think that Jonah Savaiania was probably a pretty decent option. The Falcons did reach for him too, but I'd rather the Vikings trade down and reach for a guy than reach for a guy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if Savaiania turns out to be a bad player and Jackson turns out to be a good player, that's going to be in the wash, but that's kind of the most boring version of a lot of these discussions. Well, if he's good, it's good. Yeah, I agree. But I think that because we don't know who's good or who's bad yet, the way that you can maximize your odds is by making sure that you take good value and sometimes sacrificing the position that you think you need to get in a draft that just didn't fall your way. Sometimes the draft doesn't fall your way. That's okay. Grab a different position that you need. And I think that, the Vikings are going to struggle in the secondary this year. And we're going to have to ask a question like, is it worse to have not grabbed a cornerback than to have grabbed a guard? And, we're not going to ever know the counterfactual, but we should be open to the possibility that might have been a better team building option and then also generate an additional pick in the third round or something like that.
Or Asante Samuel is literally on the phone right now.
Why is everyone talking about him? He's not good. Like, why cares about Asante Samuel?
Because somebody found him in a nightclub with a Vikings hat on, or a guy named Asante with a Vikings hat on.
No confirmation.
What if it was just a different guy named like Asante Brown? Was like, I don't know, my name's Asante.
Right? Yeah,
it is interesting
how much Asante Samuel comes up. Like he's mid.
It's entirely Scornor's fault. Blame Judd Mackey.
The quarterback that they acquired is only costing them $1 million. They've got a lot of money. They saved a lot of money by not getting like, a Tannehill or trading for Cousins. There's enough money there to sign someone like an Asante Samuel if it's $8 million. If it's like a Gilmore deal, right? $10 million.
Yeah, they're gonna go get somebody, right? Whether it's Samuel, Gilmore back, Shaq Griffin back, like they're gonna get another body in here. It just feels like that, doesn't it? At this point,
absolutely. And I think that that's a concern a lot of people have. But like, I would simplify it down to this. I think there are two areas you could have drafted where you get a 2025 upgrade and improve your chances, however marginally, of maximizing this 2-year window where I legitimately think it's a Super Bowl window. Like if your quarterback is what you expect, your roster is ready. So you're maximizing. It's saying,
also old. I think it's the oldest roster in the NFL. One reason I wanted more picks, by the way. Yeah. But we're kind of enabled for a win now.
We're slated to have like 10 next year.
Hooray!
Comp picks.
Yep. This was a big part of the draft on Saturday. Sam Howell acquired. You move back 30 picks. You get Sam Howell. 1 year left on his deal. $1.1 million. Now I was as down as anybody in this show on Sam Darnold last year. I am equally as down on Sam Howell, and I think this will be a great test for KOC's reclamation education that he puts these guys through.
I hope not. I hope we never see him.
Yeah, let's never find out.
Same. And number one, unless the money is going toward a corner, I would not be surprised if they are actually still going to add a veteran, because at $1.1 million, Sam Howell can be your QB3. There's no issue with that financially. He was awful in 2023. Awful. Now he's young.
The only year we have data for, by the way, which is not true for Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold had more bad stuff on his resume coming into Minnesota than Howell.
But he also has more good stuff. That's, I think, the difference here. Howell's has no good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, what's Howell's good stuff?
I said Howell had no good stuff.
Oh, Howell had no good stuff. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a difference.
He can move around. Like, he's not afraid to run. 5 rushing.
It's going to be very similar to Nick Mullins. It's going to be like chaos ball, high variance.
It is.
Yeah.
So you can sail through the storm and find a win somehow in a crazy game.
Here's kind of the deal with quarterbacks that and again, KOC has earned the benefit of the doubt, and maybe he can produce a lot with Sam Howell here. But the thing with these kinds of guys is, if you're a high sack rate quarterback, which Sam Howell is like a sack rate of like 10%, he's an enormously high
pressure to sack. Yeah, horrible.
You should not be a high turnover quarterback, because that's usually the trade-off, is that you're holding onto the ball so you can find better options, or you're getting rid of the ball quickly to avoid the sack, and so that might improve or increase your turnover rate. Obviously, ideally, having as little of both is there. But if we're making trade-offs here, usually one trades off with the other. And if not that, at least you get like a reasonably high yards per attempt, which we also didn't get. So he has a low yards per attempt, high sack rate, and a high interception rate. So on that, essentially the three-legged table of how you manage a pocket and how you assess risk. It's not working there.
Slinging Sammy.
It's not working. Low yards per attempt, high interception rate, already bad, and then a really high sack rate. Because he led the league in sacks. Obviously not in sack rate because you've had other people with fewer attempts, but like he led the league in sacks and led the league in interceptions in 2023.
Yeah, not good. Nobody can argue that. Well said. How bad was his offensive line? Like, how much did that have to do with, hey, we're already down 14-0. We're already down 14-0. I already got to pass it. Defense wasn't good that last year under Ron Rivera. I'm trying to think outside of Scary Terry. Curtis Samuel, I guess. I'm trying to think back. Jahan Dotson, who turned out not to be good. I'm just saying, like, just like Sam Darnold, like, no, you were bad on a bad team. Can you come over to a good team with a good coach who knows what he's doing?
Yeah, it was a bad team. I would say he had better receiving options than people gave him credit for, which Jaden Daniels ended up kind of proving.
Yeah.
But it was a bad offensive line. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think, yeah, I agree. Luke and I talked about this on day 3 on the stream. Like, it is reminds you of a little Nick Mull. Like, he's fun. He's not good enough to compete with JJ for the starting job. Yeah. He's got a live arm, overconfident sometimes, makes for some fun highlights, right? He's only 24. This just is another example of, can KOC get him to play, within structure more, because there is some upside there.
I don't want to overstate my argument here. The criticism mostly stems from, I don't think that this is another Sam Darnold, and I want to push back against that. I like the move. I think the Vikings were smart to do that.
I do too.
I
would have rather had Daniel Jones. But
it's about as cheap as they ever come. It cost you 30 spots in round 5.
It didn't even cost you a pick. Yeah,
I'm okay.
Do I trust Sam Howell? No. Do I trust the other quarterback they would have gotten if they didn't get Sam Howell? Also, no.
No. Right.
Ryan Tannehill wouldn't be a little more trustworthy than Sam Howell.
I bet they would have signed Ryan Tannehill if Tannehill was willing to be a backup.
I still think Tannehill prefers to just be on speed dial for teams who get hurt and not do like the whole training camp dog days.
Yeah, if Ryan Tannehill signs somewhere to be a backup before the season starts, I'll walk this back and say, hey, the Vikings should have negotiated better, pushed harder, whatever. And I would have preferred Ryan Tannehill to giving up however little draft compensation to grab a worse quarterback. Sure. But until that happens, I don't see Tannehill as someone who's available. Also, Ben Brown, you're asking if Braun is okay. Generally not true, but specifically definitely not true today.
There's a lot of gross noises coming out of this part, so I'll be muting for those. You're welcome.
Yeah. I dove deep too, and I got to watch more video. It was hard for me to find anything redeeming about Sam Howell's 2023.
He threw almost 4,000 yards.
The raw yardage was there. The play
action.
Was that more than Caleb? Was that more than Caleb last year?
He led the league.
Would have been a top 3 ever Bears season.
He led the league because
they were down 17-0 with 8 minutes left in the first quarter every game.
And whose fault was that?
Don't worry about it. That's not important. Your Honor, order.
I have a question for Sam and Luke then, since you seem pretty down on these guys. Does he lose the backup job to Brett Rippon? Because that's the competition.
I think I've said this for a while. I think they like Brett Rippon, but what does that mean? What does that mean when you bring in Sam Howell?
They just traded for a guy. How much do they like him?
What does that mean when you bring in Sam Howell?
Who's QB2 to start? Is it Howell right off the bat, or do they give it to Rippon and make Howell beat him?
They'll split reps.
They'll split reps at QB2.
Why are we overlooking Max Brosmer?
Max Brosmer is going to be handing off with the running backs.
Who was the Iowa? Who's the fourth string Iowa kid they brought in?
Nate Stanley.
He's the Nate Stanley.
Yeah.
Of the
Remember
summer.
Peter Pujols? We were like, ooh, he runs around.
Holy Cross, yeah. Peter Pujols.
Yeah.
It's actually a
James
Vanderberg,
right? The other Iowa's fourth string guy.
Yeah, Joel Stavi.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
had one of the
No,
worst
every
practices I've ever
year
seen.
there is a fourth quarterback, and every year that guy doesn't do drills with the quarterbacks. He just hands off during the run
Correct.
drills.
And 90% of the
He's-
time, he's like a Big Ten quarterback, too. I love it. They
And
had
Usually
Illinois
the
guy
local
in.
dude that
Hometown
they don't have to
local
try very
dude.
hard to get, that's going to play one quarter of one preseason game and not actually have a chance.
They thought that was
I
going
will
to
see
be
you
Trey
in the
Lance, but
UFL
he went
Max
third
Fest.
overall. They're like,
They drafted Nate Stanley, though, right? Like, that's the difference between
Yeah,
like,
7th round
him
pick.
Seventh
Yeah.
round
and
guy.
Oh my God,
Brosmer and
that guy was
Vanderberg
so
and the
bad.
Illinois guy, Wes Chandler, whoever it was.
Wes
Lunt.
Lunt.
Wes Lunt. That's it.
Lunt.
That's it.
I want your favorite day 2 or day 3 pick from the Vikings next. Brought to you today by Nissan and the 2025 Nissan Armada. We're highlighting the top pick from our draft, the one selection that stood out, the guy who showcased the strength and power to push the Vikings forward as we look ahead to next season. This is a major spoiler for the next segment, but I'm going to give it to you. It's Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. High upside, high motor, heavy duty, pushes running backs 20 yards back from the line of scrimmage. There is a play of that on tape. It's awesome. He's going to conquer interior offensive linemen in a rotational capacity. I call him TID, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. It's clear that our top pick of the draft is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you in your all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles, the Armada, the Rogue, the Pathfinder. Go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. I spoiled it. My favorite pick, it's Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. I like the upside. I like the power that he exhibits and his ability on tape to like kind of pick through the trash, like work through a double, work through a good block, find a way to escape and make a play. It's not a DJ Wanham situation where everything is like, oh, they missed assignment. No, like he actually earns his splash plays. And I'm not saying that there
But
wasn't
enough about
bad
Derek Harmon.
There's there's bad stuff too. But he basically played one season. Like there's quite a bit of upside with this guy. I like him. Tweener, and Luke and I decided on the stream Saturday, Jihad Ward replacement. So I'm good with it. I like it a lot. I think he could be your kind of your edge 4, edge 5 territory this year. That's my favorite. How about you guys?
Well, not a lot of options here, really.
Yeah,
1, 2,
suppose
3,
we
or
could all
maybe
get
C or
one.
D.
I also like Ingram. Felton would be just a little bit behind Ingram, but I mean, I'm not gonna reiterate everything you said. He is a fun kind of one of those athletic, right, freak. Like he'll probably flash one play, and you're like, whoa, okay, here we go, and then he'll probably have that welcome to the NFL moment the next. But the tools are there. I think I read it in the Beast. Dane Brugler, third fastest short shuttle among all defensive tackles. There's a ton of the RAS score is phenomenal. I mean, again, very athletic. I think Flores, obviously, anytime Flores, gives him stamp of approval, that should speak volumes alone. But, what is he going to be? A 5 tech? He can slide inside on sub packages. He just needs some more reps. But Georgia, like Alabama, they're just defensive line machines over there. He's got the raw talent in there. It's just a matter of getting on the field. And now you've got, 4 young guys there. Taki, Redmond, the other guy I keep forgetting. But you got 4 young guys there. Yeah, thank you, LVR. And the hope is in 2026, one of those guys, maybe 2, can start to develop a little bit more and be a little bit more of a full-time rotation guy. But now you got some young talent really to sit back there and develop.
Yeah, there are a couple of like high motor defenders that I really like. One of them is Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. He's I also like, instant path to playing time. Not a starting role, but playing time, right? Jihad Ward played, Pat Jones played, Dallas Turner still even got snaps when he was in his lowest. Like he still got some, right? And by the end of the season, he was getting like half the snaps a game. So I like that there's this kind of instant path to rotating in. But I do want to bring up Kobe King too.
Kobe King.
That guy,
Kobe King.
Zoom. He goes Zoom, which is very fun. He's very much an around, not through kind of linebacker, not like a stack and shed kind of guy, but he'll try to dip under you, much in the vein of Ivan Pace and Brian Asamoah. I think this guy kind of immediately comes in and challenges Brian Asamoah for his roster spot,
Yes,
and for his role moving forward. He'll probably have to do most of his work on special teams, but you can tell on the field Kobe King is like an effort guy, and effort guys tend to do well in special teams.
Yeah, I was going to mention Kobe King as the guy I was going to pick. So first, from a consensus board standpoint, he was like the best pick, right? So I might as well just bring him up. 167, 172, something like that, somewhere in that range. Where he's ranked, he gets picked at like 206 or something, right? So high value pick, that's great. Why did he fall so far? Well, probably because he's not a coverage guy. He's in the spirit of Ivan Pace, an undersized linebacker who is much better against the run and rushing the passer than he is in coverage. The scouting reports I've read on him suggest that he's got clunky feet, I think is the thing that stood out to me in terms of his coverage capability. And that matches the little I've seen of him thus far.
There's like no technique to it. He just kind of runs to places.
Yeah. Relatively low awareness and stuff like that. Okay. But like Braun said, he is a remarkably high effort guy. He hits, I think, above his weight. So I think his Penn State weight was something like 248. At his pro day, he was at 233. So he slimmed down, I think, in order to run faster. But he's pretty fast on the field. I think that he's more kind of see it and go than he is like instinctual or whatever. But we're talking about a 6th round pick. I think he's way better at playing linebacker than most 6th round picks. I think that Luke's right, that he's going to immediately be a value on special teams. And I really like his attitude, his motor, and the fact that there is a tiny bit of somewhat kind of roster mirroring going on where if Ivan Pace goes down, Kobe King can fulfill some of the same roles because he is a really effective blitzer and pass rusher. Yeah. Now, people always get kind of over-indexed on roster mirroring. He's not Ivan Pace. Notably, Ivan Pace went undrafted, so you don't want to be too strong about this. But he's not Ivan Pace. He's not as good, but he does a lot of similar things, close to as well as Ivan Pace. Not as good in coverage, which that's not a strength of Pace's either. But I think that instead of having to move somebody, and you'll still see it, instead of having to move somebody around like we did with all the edge rushers, right, with Van Ginkel especially, you could have somebody like a Kobe King come in and allow Van Ginkel to do kind of the stuff he does best instead of forcing him into a role.
Yeah. Where is he more like Gerald Hodges or Michael Maudie? The other Penn State.
State
linebackers.
I like to think it was more of a Micah Parsons, personally.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right.
We got to talk about who's probably the sexiest pick of the 5, Tai Felton in the 3rd round, the wide receiver that has by position, he is without a doubt. People want to talk about receivers. Here's my take on Felton. This is a redshirt year for him. You've got Moore as a gadget guy. You've got Jalen Nailor contract year. They're not going to re-sign him. I mean, I can't see any path where Jalen Nailor gets re-signed unless he struggles, and it's like a small deal. But if he struggles, why do you want him back anyway? If you watch the highlights of Felton, you would think deep threat, like unbelievable speed when he gets in the open field. You would say, this guy makes contested catches. Yeah, and I think that is true. This guy makes contested catches. If you compare the highlight reel to then the numbers, all right, high target guy, ton of opportunities, like 100, like second highest targets, I think, in the nation.
143 targets.
Super highly targeted. So, yeah, he's going to do some good stuff.
Was Maryland like losing every game? Is that what that's about?
Was it to his brother throwing to him also, I think?
Yeah, in the spirit of high-value Maryland receivers, DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, now Tai Felton, they had bad quarterbacks.
Sure.
And yeah,
to your point too, Sam, I've seen a lot of people say he led the entire Big Ten in catches and I think yards per game. He broke DJ Moore's school record for I think it was most catches in a season. It'd be fun to go back and compare how many more targets he did have compared to like a DJ Moore and some other Big Ten receivers. But very productive, a lot of opportunities.
And
not super efficient in those opportunities.
It should be pointed out, opportunities are a signal for talent. I don't want to
That's true. Yeah. There's a reason they kept throwing to him though, too.
Yeah. Separation. Yeah. He's probably getting a lot of separation. He was not productive on deep balls. That might be a quarterback thing. He was not productive on contested catches either. Relative to like good receivers. So I think there are some red flags. Luke, Braun, you had a couple technique red flags that you illuminated. You want to give those to this audience for the newcomers?
So he tips every route, and anytime somebody contacts him downfield, it's like DJ Jazzy Jeff. He explodes into a flying mist.
I was thinking Thanos, but yeah, that one works.
Yeah. But the like jumping his pads thing is a pretty common issue for young receivers. His is pretty consistent, and it's a really big tip off. His second his pads come up, that route is about to break off, and good corners will know. Actually, Steve Smith was talking about this in relation to Travis Hunter and saying he's not all he's cracked up to be as a receiver because he tells every route, and he's got like a million tells and everything like that. But I'm pretty sure he's going to play more corner anyways. But it's a bad habit that needs to get broken. He's also needs to. I don't know if you want him to bulk up, because the whole point of him is speed, and the more bulk you get, the harder it is to stay fast. So like he might just have to play like a skinny guy, more Addison and Jefferson. I guess everybody's just going to be in a bunch. We can never have anyone release, right? So it doesn't really solve that problem. It exacerbates it. And then also you can tell that when he's running a route, he's not going as hard as when he has the ball. And maybe that's trying not to outrun the arm of your cruddy Maryland quarterback. Like sometimes that's justified, or sometimes you're in a zone and you want to jog it and stuff. But sometimes you're on a clear out and you're just not running that hard.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think that when he is running that deep ball, there are elements where it's like, oh, he's like prepared for this. Like he knows how the deep ball works. He like stacks the defender, for example, which low technique receivers kind of generally don't know how to do. And it's like interesting that like he does that. And he's like a decent ball tracker, but yeah, other than that, I don't know that that's all that distinguishable from like Marvin Hall, right? Or, I just like pick a deep ball guy, like, Emmanuel Arsenault, Devin Aroma should do.
Yeah.
Khalif Raymond.
And an after catch guy, dynamic with the ball in his hands. Maybe you want him to try out at returner. And that's maybe the point of him as like a gadget player. But I would really hard push back on people who are like, he's going to take the job from Naylor, because he has a drops issue too. So if you don't like Naylor drops, you don't even solve that.
Eight drops.
He had 3 fumbles, I know, as a junior too.
Right. Yeah. His drop percentage. Yeah, his drop percentage is pretty high, like 7-8%.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's a huge issue. I think a lot of it comes in situations where contact could suggest itself. I'm not even saying like there is contact, because I don't see the drops as focused drops. I see them as he's not strong. So I think that plays a role. But like, yeah, I think his most likely positive scenario, like if we assume he's going to have a positive career, the most likely version of that is like an Andre Roberts, which is good to have on a roster. Like that's fine. But I don't think he is like your third receiver in all likelihood. Things can change. Someone in the chat mentioned you've got Keenan McCardell, that's true, but it's also true for all the receivers that you don't like on the Vikings roster. So like, let's not be like over enthusiastic about that. But I think that's a good point that like you've got somebody with a lot of raw physical tools that hopefully can decelerate in the way that you need him to, in ways that don't do stuff like tip routes, like you said, pad level, where your hips are pointing, where your eyes are looking, those kinds of things. He doesn't even like explode out of his, like, when you sink your hips and then use that. He doesn't even do that.
That gear down, right? When you gear down, just not very sudden, not very.
We should be way more excited about a third round.
Yeah, he's just not very polished. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Again, we're putting stock into our coaches again, and Keenan McCardell doing his thing. I agree with you, Sam. Red shirt year for sure. Well, some of these later picks feel like 2026.
Yeah, I see the vision.
It's a 40 time with special teams upside.
And he does play a lot of special teams. He did a lot of like kickoff and punt coverage stuff in college.
And again, dynamic with the ball. Maybe you want to get him on the return game.
Yeah, which like I don't think he did too many returns, but like that you would want to explore that in camp see if that was a possibility for him, and that's great. Bad value for the pick, so I'm less excited about him. I really think the Kobe King pick was good, and I'm sure I'm going to be wrong on both of these guys in like September.
Yeah, he's no Kendall Wright. Okay,
he's no Kendall Wright.
He's no Kendall Wright.
I hope not.
Before we move to UDFAs, does anyone have anything poignant to say about Gavin Bartholemew? I would say he is relatively tough after the catch. and I don't know if he can block that well. That's about all I got. Next, Pat Freiermuth.
That'd be nice.
No, he needed to stay in Pittsburgh for that to happen.
I haven't watched him yet, so I am reading a scouting report on him and looking at his workout data, which is the best way to learn about a player.
Second highest average RAS, by the way, for the Vikings draft class.
Team captain, I just now learned. So, hey.
Yeah.
I guess his yards per catch dropped from his junior to senior season.
Big time, right?
Yeah. He's got a weird body build, right? Because he's tall, right? 6'5", short arms. So that's kind of interesting. Missed a couple of games due to injury, functional but not amazing blocker. Pretty linear in his movements. That's kind of Irv Smithy then. The way all of this comes together, the way the scouting report reads, it's a little. Irv Smith was short. This guy's tall, but like linear athlete. You kind of want him in after catch stuff. Willing but not capable blocker. It strikes. Mind you, Irv Smith was a second round pick, so that was a waste, and this is not a waste. It's a whatever pick. But I don't know. Kind of
one pick before AJ Brown, by the way.
God,
still, it hurts, man. It hurts.
No, I loved AJ Brown. I thought the consensus board underrated him at like 22 or whatever it was, and he falls to the second round. I'm mad. Anyway.
The Vikings needed a tight end, right? Johnny Monk gone. This was supposed to be Nick Muse's time, but he got plucked.
If you had converted AJ Brown to tight end, you would have gotten a better tight end.
You would have.
This feels like you're going to get about as much out of this guy as you got out of Nick Muse.
Yeah, I was thinking about Nick
Muse. Tight end 4,
Zach
be up and down the roster.
Onside kick recovery specialist. Yes.
Except
you go.
Well, sure that is an upside of Nick Muse. I was thinking about the funny cat stories and Instagram Reels posts that you got out of Nick Muse, which I don't know what Gavin.
We only have one known
beer
on the
after
Vikings
winning the
now.
Super Bowl.
Yeah,
We
I
only
don't know
have
what
one
Gavin
confirmed freak
Bartholomew's
on the
game
Vikings
is in
now.
that area, but I think that it's like a high bar to clear. I would not expect him to be able to do that.
His birthday is on the 30th. Maybe they just celebrate his birthday, give him the post, right, the tweet, and then maybe they cut ties.
Sayonara. The next segment is the one where the best predictions happen. We're identifying which UDFA is going to turn into a star. This is the Najee Thompson segment where Luke Braun found fame and glory. It's next. We've got 19 names to pour over. I have done intensive research on all 19 that amounts to height, weight, stats, RAS, quick analytics look, little bit of video. So let's say 5 to 10 minutes each. I've got a favorite. I'm going to hold off, though. Does anyone else want to plant their flag on one of the 19 UDFAs that the Vikings have signed?
That's about 5-10 more minutes than I've watched on any of these guys. I was just all in on the Wolves yesterday. Had the Wolves show, so yeah. I'm gonna need to do some deep dive over this week. I just know I think I counted, and Arif can correct me if I'm wrong, but 5 of these guys were on the consensus top 300. I want to say.
Correct. Yep.
So I guess I would start with those guys. I know Logan Brown, I saw in a lot of mock drafts going day 2, late day 2, early day 3. So I would assume he would be as far as consensus board goes. And then Tyler Batty, I know.
Logan Brown is a top 150 on the consensus.
Is that a
was
character
he really?
issue? Character issue with Logan?
Yeah. So Logan Brown was kicked off his team.
24.
Yeah, for striking a team. But my understanding is that in practice, it was just a one-sided fight that he started, is my understanding. But the official reporting is that he struck a teammate, and then he left, and then the coaches made sure to emphasize after he left the Wisconsin program that it was not voluntary.
Yeah, he announced, I'm entering the transfer portal, and Jim Leonard had to be like, dude, you got fired.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was very clear. And my understanding is that the Nebraska teammates were not Nebraska. Sorry, I'm thinking about. But my understanding is that his new teammates in Kansas were not overly enamored with him either. But good player, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. But yeah, top 150 player. That is why he didn't get drafted. But my guy, I think, here is probably Tyler Batty. the BYU edge.
Let's go. 26-year-old Mormon. Let's get
tweener?
it.
Yeah. I was about to say he is from BYU and he did do the mission trip, so he is 26. So and like that's the I think the Dane Brugler draft guide lists him as 25.98 years old because his birthday is in 4 days. So happy 26th birthday, Tyler Batty from Payson, Utah. But no, he's like a 3-year team captain. Which so he's very mature, right? But I think when you get an older player like that, you're looking for at least a little bit of production, which he has a lot of tackles for loss, not a ton of sacks, but a lot of tackles for loss, which is a stronger signal than sacks, a decent pressure rate, and really good workouts. I think if you're an older player, you need to have extremely good workouts because your body develops more. You're a better athlete at 26 than you are at 22 if you're continuing to work out and stuff like that. So it's good that he has good workouts. 7.213 cone, which is pretty quick for a 270-pound guy, really quick for a 271-pound guy. 10-foot broad jump, really good. 1.69 10-yard split, decent. So I think he's a pretty good athlete, pretty decently long arms, 81-inch wingspan, pretty good production, and a high character guy. So the whole deal is that he's a really hard worker, that he got team captaincy really early in a program that emphasizes maturity for obvious reasons. And he's got a pretty good stable of pass rush moves and stuff like that. So I think he's quite a good player, and it wouldn't shock me if he was better than Gabriel Murphy, which maybe that's a low bar, but there is, I think, an opportunity here for him to somewhat quickly potentially get the 4th edge rusher job. I don't want to oversell it, but I think he's good.
Luke Braun?
Yeah, I think that's maybe the
moment.
most open path to the roster is through Gabe Murphy, basically, is like knocking off Gabe Murphy and getting that 4th or 5th spot, depending on how you list Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. A couple of guys that I like here. One is Ben Urasek, the tight end out of Georgia.
Yeah.
If you decide to keep a 5th tight end or a 4th tight end, he'll make if he makes a team, he's making it on blocking and then on like being helpful in like punt protection and special team stuff. Real dirty work kind of stuff. But he sort of also potentially gives you that. I mean, Josh Oliver in a contract year, right? You're looking for blocking tight ends, so there's an opportunity there. Also, Kwesi, you're not slick. You cannot sneak past this NC State small center. You can't sneak this past us. And if Michael Juergens moved to guard, they don't have a backup center. I don't know if that's still the case now that they drafted Donovan Jackson, but there might be a pass to the roster as a backup center there. I don't think anybody here is like popping out as this crazy cool, like as this, Matt Daniels special teams ace. That's probably Tai Felton is the rookie that takes that role that, replaces Najee Thompson, which speaks, I think, to Arif's value argument. But those are the guys I think with a real like path to the roster. Otherwise, you got these 2 Auburn linebackers. They're not knocking off the draft pick.
You're not going to talk about the Wisconsin guard? I thought that was like my second guy that I wanted to.
Joe Huber. Didn't we have a Huber? I think we had a Huber for a minute. Linebacker maybe.
I would say love his odds for the practice squad and to like take a good crack at the roster next year, but he didn't actually play O-line until his senior year of high school. So like super raw transfer and doesn't have the same athleticism as say someone like Logan Brown. Plus I think it's a little thicker on the outside.
Yeah, so his like foot speed isn't very good, but he's apparently like strong as hell. Like Wisconsin weight room, I'm not going to say he set records, but he's like the strongest offensive lineman there while he was active, which is kind of a lot to say, I think. So I don't know. He's kind of curious. His wrestling background, was apparently a successful wrestler in high school. We know that the Vikings have historically loved that under Spielman. I guess maybe they like that here. I don't know. But I'm curious about him because he was originally in Cincinnati, transferred from Cincinnati to Wisconsin, and apparently people like him. So
how about, I remember watching Drake May tape last year. How about the tight end from North Carolina, Nesbitt? He caught like 5 touchdowns, 500 yards, and then he got hurt. I think he missed like half the season. So he
caught passes from Sam Howell in his freshman year.
That's
a reunion. Yeah,
really
apparently he's like apparently he has like no play strength and then ran a 4.8. So he's like the slowest receiver you've ever seen. I'm not sure that's a package that works out.
Good.
I watched a little bit of him. Yeah, like again, the highlights can look really good, but it provides such a narrow glimpse into the play-by-play stuff. But I was intrigued by that because he caught passes from a top 5 pick. There were Kwesi cornered the market on like 1 year Auburn guys who transferred in and played average for a year in Auburn, undersized
like 5
linebackers.
Auburn dudes.
There's also a lot of there's some good ones too. There's some gems. There's some really bad RAS guys on this list. But
Silas
one
Bolden
that
is the big offender there, but that's a lot of that size, and then also not being agile enough to make up for that size. What if Tutu Atwell wasn't dynamic?
Bolden can return punts. That was his specialty at Texas. Took one to the house in the college football playoff.
His path to the roster.
I want Braun to go back and watch more Georgia pass rush tape because Chaz Chambliss sounds like a Will Ferrell movie character name. I would like to say Chaz Chambliss more often. And he played next to Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. But my guy is going to be Zemiah Vaughn out of Utah. A legit 6'2", super lean. I think they can add some weight to that frame. Really strong coverage resume over a number of years where we're talking like 50, 55% completion percentage against, gets around the ball a lot. 4 legit years being a contributor at Utah. That's a pretty good conference. It's a pretty good frame. Excellent testing.
Yeah, good pro day. Wow.
Excellent testing. I like the profile a lot.
80-inch wingspan, 4'4", 540, almost 40-inch vert. Great broad jump too.
I think the key is that he turns like a freighter stuck in the Suez Canal, right? That's why he didn't get drafted.
What? That was vivid imagery.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. That like horrible agility and gets beat by like shifty receivers. I think that's what got him undrafted. So that's gonna put kind of a cap on you for me.
Not a great tackling resume either. Intrigued by the size,
physical.
Also, yeah, and who doesn't like a small school running back who just motored through people like Trey Stewart, Jacksonville State, 1,600 yards, insane production, 25 touchdowns last year. Like you love the big time small school. This was Dwayne McBride, right? And he was a bust.
Yeah.
So
wide open RB3. Ty Chandler does not have a lock on that.
I'm into Trey Stewart. Any other names of the 19 before we depart?
I mean, I like Eurosick, so I haven't watched Gavin Bartholomew, but it wouldn't shock me if Eurosick was like a better tight end than him. So
the punter's
one of those 3 tight ends is sticking around. One of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by math, one of them has to.
But like not necessarily they're good, but
mathematically, one must.
One must.
I mean, they could always like grab like a Ellefson type.
Yeah.
You
that
have
could be
to
a waiver
understand
claim
how
thing
high a
like
regard I have to hold a 4th string tight end if he's from NDSU and I'm name dropping him. Go Ben Ellefson. What a guy.
Who's the tight end the Packers sniped from us and then they ended up playing him a little bit. He got some run.
I think it was Ellefson.
Oh, was that him? No. Was that?
No, I know the guy who's still on the Packers.
Yeah, Sims.
Yeah.
We liked him a lot. Yeah.
It's always tough, like for the 2 Auburn linebackers or for these 2 tight ends. It's always tough when you're at the position that they just drafted somebody to be at the bottom of the roster because you have to make quite the case to get someone to cut a draft pick over you.
Mm-hmm.
I will end with this. The Najee Thompson of this group, who had a horrible profile and very little production at Georgia Southern, I think, and Braun nailed it. The Najee Thompson of this group is Robert Lewis. I don't know what he does well, and I can't even find evidence that he's a great special teamer. Super unathletic testing, 4 years at Georgia State where he was okay, did nothing at Auburn. I don't know why Robert Lewis is here, and that makes me think he's going to be the sleeper.
There's got to be a Matt Daniels vision, right?
There's an angle.
Yeah, I wrote Jordan Addison without the it factor. 5'11", 185, ran a 4.45, and plays like the worst version of all of those numbers.
Officially 5'10", by the sorry,
5'10",
measurements are 5'10". Sorry, the pro day 5'10" and 0.8. So 5'11" was an inflation by Auburn.
I too am 5'10", 185, probably in worse shape.
Has there ever been an official measurement that was actually taller than the college bio page.
That has occasionally happened. I'm trying to remember who that happened to, but now I can't. But I do remember that happening very occasionally.
Very, very rarely.
It's like a 1% of cases kind of thing.
James Kunow, yes, Ben Ellefson is currently a coach on the Vikings. Ben Sims is just still a tight end for the Packers.
Great.
Yeah. We will be back on Thursday with this group. Ron Johnson will weigh in, and I'm sure pat himself on the back numerous times for the Donovan Jackson call. Well done, Ron.
Deserves to.
Yep, he had that. And he also had Max Brosmer to the Vikings, and he's got his Gopher sources, but he was on top of that as well. We will have the Care 11 crew talking Vikes on Wednesday. We're back Thursday, full week. Plenty of draft breakdown. Thank you for watching, listening, subscribing, and commenting. Great chat today. Thanks to Luke's. Thanks to Arif. I'm Sam Ekstrom. It's the Minnesota Football Party. Talk to you next time.